My name is Jessica Dibb, and I am the co-director of the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance and the founding director of Inspiration Consciousness School and Community. And I'm here with my beautiful friend and colleague, Dr. Ela Manga, who is a co-founder of Breathwork Africa and the Humanities system of breathwork. And the reason that we are so excited to be here and why I am personally excited to be here is because I had the honor and privilege of being asked to write a book about breathwork by Norton Publishers, who is one of the most respected publishers in the world and very much supportive of academic understanding of personal growth and transformation and healing and psychological well-being. And when I wrote that book, first of all, I had the beautiful Ela willing to read some parts of it and give her feedback, and that was invaluable. And after the book was published, she gave me such beautiful feedback about the value of this book that I was deeply honored, not only because of her stature in terms of the breathwork field and her excellent work in terms of medicine, but also because she herself has written a really amazing book called Umoya that has touched me deeply. And so we came up with the idea that we would come on here together and talk about our books. And hopefully this would inform people who are wanting to use the power, the healing power of conscious breathing for physical, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual well-being. So hi, Ela. I'm glad we're doing this.
Oh, thank you so much, Jessica. It is such a joy and privilege for me to be talking to you today.
So the book, which I've had the honor to write, is called Breathwork and Psychotherapy, Clinical Applications for Healing and Transformation. And the beautiful book that Ela has written is called Umoya, The Science and Wonder of Conscious Breathing. So, Ela, I'd like to start by saying that it was a real privilege to feel your support and encouragement of this book and to receive even some of your feedback about one of the chapters in some detail. And I think that really helped a lot. So I'd love to hear from you why you are so appreciative of this book.
Oh, thank you, Jessica. Firstly, I just want to say deep gratitude. I have such deep gratitude to you for writing this book and for all the time and the effort that you put into the rigorous research that went into this. Without compromising the heart and the essence and the spirit of breath. And that comes through so strongly. As a medical doctor and working in the field of integrative medicine, I really have seen that breath is the fundamental missing piece in the health conversation. So I personally feel passionate about re-establishing breath as a fundamental pillar of health, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And so I feel that in order for that to happen, we need to create a new understanding of the wonder that is this physical form. And going through my medical training, the way that I learned about the physical body was so siloed. It was so separated. And it was only through my experience with the breath that I started to awaken to the wonder and the miracle that is this physical form. And that's what I feel passionate about sharing with the world. And the way that you have written this book is really such a beautiful way for people to enter into that conversation with really coming alive to how intricate and wondrous this physical form is, and the way that you were able to marry, integrate the solid research that is being illuminated in this field with the essence of breath is just so really beautiful. And the way that you have created such a practical framework for anyone who is curious about breath and professionals who are working with it or who would like to work with it. It just has given such a solid toolkit at making this really accessible for everybody. And I think this is a seminal work and it is timely. It is what the world needs right now. And really, this is such a massive contribution that I'm so grateful to you for.
Mm. Thank you so much, Sheila. It was, it was really a labor of love of a whole community. I feel like the work has come out of decades of my experience with my clients and also with my colleagues like yourself, who have understood the still, I think, largely untapped potential of what conscious breathing can really do for our planet, let alone an individual, like what it can do for the whole collective. And so I'm just curious, like what parts of the book um, or what chapters have really stood out to you?
I mean, I think another thing that I really appreciated before I get into the chapters is how you were able to expand breath beyond it being a technique or a tool, and rather a way of being in the world and a language of our shared humanity. And I really appreciated how you honored the threads that have been woven through all the indigenous wisdom practices and how you were able to honor how breath has been a part of our, our indigenous wisdom practices for thousands and thousands of years. And often we think that breath work has its roots in the East, or we think about breath in a narrow way. And I think you were really able to expand this conversation and really honor that it's always been here as a way that we have connected to us as part of all of nature, as us as part of all of existence. And I really honored that. I really honor that rather. I'd also like to say that I appreciated how you were able to name where we find ourselves on the planet right now. And without kind of spiritually bypassing, you were able to name the very real practical applications for breath work on our planet at this time. It is more crucial than ever that breath is not just um, a practice that activates an expanded state of consciousness. And yes, of course, it does. And from that space, we are able to relate to what we are facing on our planet right now. But I really appreciated how you were able to name specific scenarios, war situations, and places where we have been denied breath. The fact that not all breath is equal, not all air is freely available.
Mhm.
And you expanded that conversation. We cannot have the conversation of conscious breathing if we do not name that not all breath is equal. And I really appreciated your incredible declaration, the Universal Breathing Declaration, which I think every single breath school should include as part of their training. I really feel strongly about that. I just love the way that you articulated that on page 349, the Universal Breathing Declaration. And perhaps it's a good time to perhaps read that.
Sure. Yes.
Because
Maybe
I think it.
maybe
Mhm.
before you read it, I can just say a little bit about what you've been saying and what inspired that Universal Breathing Declaration to come into being. Because, yes, I feel strongly, I've seen people who feel like they hate each other, feel like they're indifferent to each other, have a huge argument going on. Um, I've seen them breathe together. And because breathing is a medium that is actually a language that predates our capacity to speak in words that are a language, recognizable language, they are able to transcend the differentiations of their opposing or positions or polarizations and feel what connects them viscerally, not just in their imagination or in their sense of what might be right or wrong, but they physiologically and biologically experience our essential oneness. And that opens up a whole different level of conversation. So I have this vision, and I know it's wild, but I know it's the future of humanity, that we would be a breathing centered culture. We would understand that breathing is it's the unifying language and it's also our foundational language. That the first breath, we would understand the significance of that, that that is laying the groundwork. It's going to be in the neural substrate of every breath that's taken after that. And it's going to be in the neural substrate that is in every experience that we ever have. So I dream of the first breath being treated with reverence, and everybody in the room is breathing, and everybody's, in their own wholeness. And then that's just the beginning, that infant's breath is recognized, that they are supported as they grow, not just to learn the language of their culture and perhaps other languages, but to learn the language of breathing and how it can be utilized when we're with people and when we're working inside of ourselves. And that ultimately we would have a culture where there was a breath worker in every emergency room, a breath worker in every hospital, every healthcare setting, every government office, schools, theaters, gyms. There would just be breath workers everywhere, because breath can be modulated for particular kinds of results. And even deeper, and I know this is where our books have a lot of simpatico, that even deeper, there is a unique individual emergent breathing that every person has in every moment. Like what would be optimal breathing for me right now is going to be a little different than what would be optimal breathing for you. And what's optimal breathing for me right now is going to be different than maybe 5 minutes from now, depending on internal and external shifting of myself and even of the people around me and the creatures and the earth, but also things that I may not be aware of that is shifting the biosphere and affecting my breathing. And so I just dream of this breathing centered world where we're regulating all the time so that we're able to be present with every situation, with any person, no matter what time. And so that we are able to access our deepest potentials, our creativity, our intelligence, that the two hemispheres of our brain are, functioning in an integrated way, that our autonomic nervous system is available to move towards sympathetic dominance when it needs to, and parasympathetic, and shift easily, that we feel present enough that we're responsive to what's happening. This is what I dream of, and all of that came about. I think I was always feeling that way, and then the year 2020, it was like there was just these waves of the revelation of the deepest shadow of humanity being breathlessness, which we act out more on marginalized communities than we do on, dominant communities. But we act it out on everybody because we separate people from the creative life force. We say that there's a lot of religions that make sort of the idea of a divinity or creation something that you have to earn, you have to be worthy of, that has to go through an intermediary, when actually it's right here in our own body, in our own breathing. And we've separated ourselves from it. So there's oppression at the individual level, there's oppression at the collective level, and there's additional oppression of marginalized communities. And so I saw that breathlessness is kind of the shadow of humanity's full potential of a breathing humanity, a consciously breathing humanity. And in 2019 and 20, we had the big fires start to happen in Australia and Europe and the United States that were killing billions of animals, causing respiratory illness, the world ecologically out of balance. So that was one wave of breathlessness that had many different, places it took place and still does. We had COVID, which I think made ordinary people aware of the value of their breathing, and the images and the knowledge that there were people that were literally gasping to keep breathing, struggling to stay alive. And we became so aware of how central breathing is to us. And there's just a much more, I think that spurred part of the interest in breath work to accelerate almost exponentially. And then the third wave was George Floyd in the United States having, saying on the ground when he has a police officer's knee in his neck, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And who can't viscerally feel how terrifying that would be? And how many people have there been throughout history who have said those same words or felt that same thing, even just walking into a room with people that they feel, dismissed by or marginalized by. So I feel like that was a wake-up call that not only re-energized racial justice movements, but it just got everybody so much more in touch with, again, the importance and the value of our breathing. And it was out of all of that that the Universal Breathing Declaration just sort of arose in the middle of the night. And I really appreciate that you see the value in it. And just to say that there's a website that's been created for that, and it's going to be launched in February or March of this year, where people can actually sign on to it and make a commitment that they're going to do a few minutes of conscious breathing every day. And we'll make an announcement about that so that people can tune in when that happens. So
it's really beautiful. Thank you, Jessica. So I'd like to read that declaration now, if I may.
yeah.
And the invitation is for everybody who's listening now, perhaps just to listen with their breath and their heart. And just right now, begin with an exhale and allow the ground beneath your feet to support you. Breathing is life. Being grateful for our own breathing, we support the essential right of all people to breathe safely and well. We believe in co-creating a world in which all people, breathers, have the freedom to breathe and share healthy air. We commit to collectively explore and support healthy breathing for all, so that individuals, families, communities, and our collective life can thrive, and we can share our gifts with one another. The world itself breathes as everything participates in the oxygen cycle. Being conscious and reverent about our shared breathing, we move from separateness to community, to interconnection, wholeness, and love. We acknowledge the responsibility to care for the sustainability, health, and beauty of our planet. We honor and support all people's breathing, including their first and last breaths. We support clean, healthy air in every space on Earth. We support beneficial treatment and compassionate care for respiratory challenges and all illnesses. We dedicate ourselves to removing barriers to safe, optimal breathing and ending the suffering due to ecological imbalance, violence, war, marginalization, economic deprivation, or injustice. We dedicate ourselves to the well-being of our ecosystems and to all that breathe within them, the humans, other animals, plant life, and all beings. Remembering this, we will take time to consciously breathe every day with gratitude and recall our commitment to respect and support the right of all to breathe safely and well. May we benefit from the power of our individual and collective breathing and care for this breathing earth. We can breathe the world, all stewards of health, culture, learning, and love. All therapists, breath workers, and all breathers. We have the opportunity to become breath activists, breath lovers, and love activists. This is our charge. It's on our watch. We can breathe the world. Let us receive breathing.
I'm so moved, Ela, for that soulful, heartful dedication that you transmitted in your own breath just now and in your voice in reading that declaration. I'm truly moved. Thank you.
Well, thank you for transmitting it, Jessica.
And I will be very happy and joyful when the website is launched and you can sign on to it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about one of the most powerful resonances with our books. I think that we independently, not knowing that each other was having this experience, had the recognition that every person was a unique, biological, spiritual, psychological entity, and that to just have formulas for breathing, while it would initially, absolutely, if somebody has been breathing unconsciously, any kind of conscious breathing with the formulas and all of that is going to be beneficial. And plus, we do, because that's really the critical component in conscious breathing, is simply the fact that we've brought awareness to it. That's the game changer that creates all kinds of modulations and developments and possibilities inside of us. And we do know that, for instance, there tend to be, for the majority of people, there tend to be beneficial results of, for instance, extending and having a prolonged exhalation. It's going to tend to increase parasympathetic activity, which will compensate for an over-adrenalized culture that we live in, that most people have too much sympathetic dominance and they're sort of over-adrenalized and have too much cortisol. So having a reset with that prolonged exhalation, for instance, which you might do by counting or just sighing or whatever it might be, is very beneficial. We do know that the Navy SEALs use box breathing, the count in 4, hold 4, breathe out 4, hold out 4, and it helps them focus on, and there is science behind all of these things. However, science is always on a bell curve, and there are people always that are outliers in any kind of thing. But even deeper than that, the potential of every human being to be love, to be able to be present in every situation with presence and with love and respond with those qualities is was often relegated to a kind of like you had to go away and go to a monastery and go to an ashram and be sort of a shaman, a unique person. But we know, I think, Ela, you and I agree that everybody's got that capacity. And the world we all dream of is the world where everybody can get in touch with that. And from that perspective, there is a unique connection with the creative life force. So there's a unique connection with each breath in a person. And what would optimally and ultimately be the most potent thing is for a person to be so aware of their breath and working with the various physical, emotional, and spiritual patterns that have maybe limited their breath, doing the exercises, understanding about the physiology and the diaphragm, utilizing these different methods, but that they would be so in touch with that, that they would be able to allow the optimal breath to happen for themselves in each breath. And I was so delighted to find out that that was like in my book, and I actually have one chapter called Optimal Breathing, but it runs through the whole book. Your book is very much simpatico with that rather than a kind of almost patriarchal sort of view of breath work where it's like there's a right way to do it. We discover the organic, emergent way to do it.
Absolutely, Jessica. And actually, what you're speaking to is a shift in paradigm that is emergent. This is the essence of quantum physics, of quantum field theory. It's breath is emergent, and so that's what you're really describing now. And we're really at a time where that paradigm perhaps served a purpose. But in fact, the deeper we delve into and trying to understand the intricate details of how a separate part works, the more complex it becomes and the more expansive it becomes. And those edges and those illusions of separateness begin to dissolve anyway. And this is what we're seeing. The deeper we delve into really the essence of breath, and the more we delve into the cell and the nature of the mitochondria, the mitochondria that has a separate set of DNA that can only be inherited from the maternal line that, can be traced all the way back to mitochondrial Eve, that we share a maternal ancestor. I mean, just that conversation begins to expand and change how we're experiencing the breath. And also, that just our very awareness of the breath itself changes the nature of the breath and changes something within our bodies. And so I've come across this term, intra-action, and I want to just acknowledge the woman, the quantum theorist who coined this term, and her name is Karen. I just don't want to forget her surname. Just give me a moment because I really don't want to. I really want to honor her, Karen Barrett, who coined this term, interaction, intra-action. And that really speaks to the communication that occurs between two evolving entities
Mhm.
that is changing by virtue of the very communication
Mhm.
versus two discrete entities
Yeah.
communicating with each other. And I feel that, what breathwork is and what you're describing is this interaction that we are meeting every moment with the breath
Mhm.
in a new emergent way.
Mhm.
And so then we can experience breath completely beyond the structure and the form and the technique and the kind of prescribed way that often breath work is taught. As much as we can understand that they're general principles, yes, and it's important to understand those principles. For me, that conversation takes us even more deeply into understanding the miracle that is this physical form. And in fact, how our bodies are interconnected systems.
That's so beautiful, Ela, what you're saying. And again, I'm just so moved and honored that you've read the whole book, it seems. I have a chapter in the book that is about interconnection and breathing. And it's informed partially by the work of Dr. Dan Siegel, the co-founder of interpersonal neurobiology, who wrote the foreword for the book, very generously so. And in that chapter, it's really the opening to understand how we have access to the plane of possibility. We literally, with our breathing, can put into dynamic action the 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 source creation itself in the action that we're doing, because breathing is the medium for the interconnection that is inherent in all of reality.
Right.
And there's another thing that comes through in the book at that point is about something that I'm now calling conscious receptive breathing, which is to or I'm sorry, conscious responsive breathing, excuse me, conscious responsive breathing, which is an acknowledgement of the interconnection of breathing. In other words, every breath is a response to what has already been here and what is trying to emerge. And every breath is affected by that, but also then affects the next moment. So,
Exactly.
so conscious responsive breathing would be a person being able, again, having done a lot of other kinds of beautiful breath work that unlocks the muscles and the intercostals and opens up the chest and the diaphragm, and has us understanding about how we can use our spine and our mouth and our nose and all of those things for breathing. Once we've sort of worked through some of that and gotten more access, this ability to do conscious receptive breathing would be literally a dance, a deep dance with the creative life force and with our potential. So there's a whole chapter on that too. And one of the great contributions in your book that I think is unique is really just it's poetry. It's an opera. It's poetry, and part of everything that you and I are talking about is your work. You're writing about the diaphragm. I have never ever read anything as beautiful about the diaphragm as I read in Umoya, and I would like to read just a little bit of that. The diaphragm is a masterpiece of functional design, subtly occupying a vast expanse of the body's interior landscape. Many have likened its shape to a parachute. Some have described it as a dome, umbrella, or jellyfish, seemingly delicate but powerful in its ability to propel, glowing and pulsating as the intelligent pulse of life. If you were to imagine a miniature version of yourself standing below the diaphragm, looking up towards the ceiling of a dome-shaped temple, you would marvel at the design of the clover-shaped central tendon in the middle of the dome, with the long muscle fibers flared out towards and attaching to the wall of ribs at their bottom edge. The front of the dome is anchored to the tip of the breastbone, the protective door of the chest. While at the back, two finger-like attachments tie it firmly to the lumbar spine at the level of the belly button. Examining more closely, you can appreciate an even more intricate and subtle design, a matrix of luminous facial fibers and threads of connective tissues connect the diaphragm to the skin of the heart and to the lining of the lungs, stretching them down as it contracts. It drapes like a blanket around the gut as one continuous web. Take your awareness to your breath, and after the exhale, and before the next inhale begins, imagine the diaphragm in its dome-shaped resting state, tucked up under the ribs with the liver nestled up against its right lower edge, and the stomach and spleen hugged up against it on the opposite side, all protected by the cage of the lower ribs. In a perfectly orchestrated sequence of events that involves carbon dioxide, a cluster of neurons in the brain, and a pair of nerves, the diaphragmatic dome is powered into action, initiating the next breath. The muscle fibers of the tent contract, flattening and gently pushing the abdominal organs down towards the pelvis. And as it does this, it pulls on the pleura, the lining of the lungs, to expand them. The vacuum this creates draws air from the atmosphere through the nostrils until it reaches and inflates the delicate elastic air sacs in the lungs. The next breath has begun. Ela, I am going to make this book, and certainly and it goes on and on, required reading for all of my trainees. The poetic nature, the way that you've created a visual art in our minds of what is actually happening, with the nuances of this is delicate, this is powerful, this is fibrous, this is, it's just so incredibly beautiful, and has made me put this on my list for my breathwork trainees forevermore, as well as the rest of the book, especially how much it supports the idea of this emergent breathing from each person. And I wasn't even aware until just now the sisterhood of that description of the diaphragm with a chapter in Breathwork and Psychotherapy. I think it's chapter 4, The Mystical Science of Breathing, which I worked with a neuroscientist and a brain scientist to get very specific about a lot of the different physiological and biological elements of breathing: pH, autonomic response, the brain anatomy, brain waves, the polyvagal piece of it, the gas exchange. And, we did science, evidence-based science, so nothing in it is sort of made up. And it comes up at the end, like your book has this beautiful diaphragmatic art that we're getting inducted into. At the end of that chapter, there's a meditation on breathing, where in each inhale and each exhale, you're being inducted into all of these chemical processes that are taking place, all of these anatomical processes that are taking place, all of these electromagnetic processes that are taking place in one breath. And it was meant to be a kind of, mind-opening psychedelic meditation. And I'm just really feeling the sisterhood of how we came through different views to expand on the feeling of breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. And I also just want to say how much I appreciate that, you know, when we create, when we write, that it is a co-creative process with the great mystery, with grace, and that we are tapping into a field of consciousness. And the fact that the two of us wrote this book simultaneously without knowing it. And, there were places where I read your book and I thought, we are saying exactly the same thing. I mean, that piece about George Floyd and the fires and COVID, there's a place in my book where I describe exactly the same things, almost in exactly the same words. How did that happen?
Collective consciousness. Yes.
Incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about the shift in paradigm that is happening. And for all of those who are holding that, it's the right time. And this is crucial work for the planet right now, Jessica. And I'm just so appreciative of this conversation and what it represents for all of us right now.
Mm. I feel the same way, Ela. It's literally a joy to be with you. I feel privileged and blessed to know you. Um, I feel that we were responding to the same call, and we will continue doing that in our work together and separately into the future. So I just want everyone to know that we could talk a lot more about both of these books. They're both available on, Amazon, which is everywhere, and a lot of other platforms as well as local bookstores. And they're both on Ela and my training list for our students, so our reading list for our students. And in these last couple of minutes that we have, we'd like to invite all of you to breathe with us. And we really want you to not try to make your breathing right or good or, more full or more deep, but literally to listen to your breathing one breath at a time and respond to it. It will ask you if it wants to breathe deeper. It will invite you to relax your shoulders or your belly if their tension is impeding the flow of breathing. Each of us is endowed with a direct connection to creation itself. It's in our breathing. And please join us for a couple of minutes of us all listening to that and breathing together. Breathing is the unifying language of our species and all life. And breathing is our most fundamental nutrient, medicine, teacher, friend, and lover. Thank you so much for being with us, everyone. Thank you, Ela.
Thank you, Jessica.